Hello folks, I'm Trev Makes It Easy, the channel where we make learning easy. In this series, Trev on Econ, I'll be taking you through topics you're likely to run into in any introductory course in economics at the college or university level. My goal is to make economics less scary, more approachable, and, if I can, mildly enjoyable. With that being said, let's make it easy. All right, folks, let's get started on lesson 2. In this lesson, we're going to look at the idea of how economists think. Now, to do this, we're going to introduce some core principles or tenets that economists like to use whenever we're starting the subject from the beginning. Now, as with anything, over time, as we get more advanced, we can relax some of these assumptions, but these principles are going to be sort of guiding lights for us, especially in our earlier days of learning. So the first thing we are going to assume or hold to us is that people are rational. Now, this one is probably the most controversial because a lot of times people instantly think, well, I know someone who's not rational, or I'm not rational. And we have to be a little careful about how we define this. So first off, we mean this in the economic sense. And what I mean by that is that people are actively trying to choose what is best for them. They're not going out of their way seeking harm, and if they are doing something that we might view as harmful, perhaps in their own mind or in their reality, it isn't harmful. A really classic example is something like a person addicted to heroin, right? Most of us can look at that person and be like, being addicted to heroin, probably not the most rational thing to be doing. However, for them, that might be easing pain. It might be helping them escape a much worse life. It might be doing something in their world, in their reality, is the best option in their mind. Now, there's a certain subjectivity to all this, which we have to be careful. But if we can keep at least that core principle of people trying to choose what's best for them, that's going to help us a lot in analyzing decision making. A more relaxed example is if I have 2 cups of coffee, they're the exact same quality, size, origin, whatever the case may be, and I say this cup is $1, this cup is $5, which would you like to buy? The rational person will pick the $1 one. All right. We're using that sort of logical brain of ours to say, well, I know what is best for me, or have an idea of what is best for me, and that's really what I'm trying to do. We can also see this sometimes as goal-directed, all right? There's something we want to achieve, what might be getting the best deal, using our resources in the most effective way, again, due to scarcity. Whatever the case may be, there's some goal we're trying to achieve, and the rational mind is going to help us get there by using the available information we have and trying to make that optimal decision for us. Now, again, is there a universal truth or a universal best outcome? That's more for the philosophers to decide. But on an individual basis, we do have this capacity to try and pick what's best for us. The second thing, and this is, I guess, my favorite out of the 3 topics we're going to cover today, but people respond to incentives. Now, incentives are something we're all familiar with. Again, you may not actively think about them, but I can tell you you've been exposed to them. Incentives, or their counterpart disincentives, are basically rewards for doing good things and punishments for doing bad things, right? The idea is very simple. If you do something good, there is a reward attached to it in hopes that you will do it again. If you do something bad, there's a punishment attached to it in the hopes that you will not do it again. Now, the reason I say we're all familiar with this is because this is the core principle about how families raise children, right? Whether it's a children or even a pet, a lot of the training that goes into that, or the raising of that being, is, oh, you did something good? Congrats, here's a cookie. You did something bad? Go sit in the corner. That's bad. And the idea is we want to associate positive feelings with positive results, negative feelings with negative results, right? Now, we have to be a little careful because incentives can have unintended consequences, right? We can often think about trying to provide a reward or a punishment to create some sort of behavioral change, but occasionally we run into issues where they don't do the things we want. So let's start with an example where an incentive is causing the change I want. So for example, in a lot of my classes, I have online quizzes, and they're worth a couple percentage points, and most people will do them. They want to get the points. But I can change a small variable in that equation and completely change the class's behavior. If, let's say, every quiz is worth 1%, I get 70% of people to do them. Well, if I lower the percentage, if I say they're worth 0, guess what? That 70% very likely will drop to 0 or near 0, because all of a sudden there's no reward for doing the thing, so they just don't see the point. Now, some might still do it, right? Some might say, oh, well, the quizzes are practice, they're going to help me on the test, so I will still do them. But the vast majority will change their behavior. Likewise, if I really want them to do the test, maybe I make each quiz worth, 10%, something ridiculous. All of a sudden, not only are the students going to be doing the quizzes, they're going to be trying really hard at them. That's kind of what I would want. However, an unintended consequence might be, well, I made them worth a lot more, so instead of people trying at them, they actually feel too much pressure, and when they feel too much pressure, maybe that's when they start cheating or going to AI or doing something where they stop actually learning the material, which is what I really want them to do, and instead they're just striving for the mark in any way possible. There's a very famous example of this involving seatbelts in cars. Before the advent of seatbelts, cars obviously did not have them, and there was lots of crashes. Okay, cars would literally just crash all the time. So someone, a brilliant person, came up with the 3-point seatbelt. Goes across your body, across your waist. It's a pretty good deal. And the purpose was, well, let's put these safety features in so people stop crashing. And they kind of got that result, but what they ended up seeing was instead of not crashing, there was actually more crashes, but less fatalities. And the unintended consequence was that by providing people with a measure of extra safety, they were actually more willing to drive recklessly and ended up getting hurt more. Now, the injuries were less severe because of the seatbelt, but the frequency actually jumped quite a bit. So we can manipulate behavior or alter behavior a lot by knowing the right variable to change and providing that incentive or disincentive to get what we want people to do. It's a very powerful tool, but like in the seatbelt example, it can sometimes cause things that we just don't expect to happen. So we always want to think about various angles to how we're designing things and not just consider the obvious. Now, the last one is that optimal decisions are made at the margin. Now, margin is going to be a phrase that we're going to see a lot throughout these lessons. Margin simply means a little more or a little less. All right. When I evaluate my decisions, I do not think of decisions holistically necessarily. You might think you do, but there's a whole subconscious process that's happening where that is just not the case. So, an example of this would be you're listening to this video, right? Every second that ticks by, your brain is subconsciously thinking, should I keep watching? All right. My goal is to make sure you do, but some of you are going to click off the video. And that is just your brain saying, I'm done with this. So how does it do that? Well, there's two forces at work here. We have what's called a marginal benefit, which is the good stuff from doing a little more or a little less. Okay? When I do more of something, when I do a little less of something, there is some benefit or good stuff that comes along with it. So again, for this video, the benefit is you might learn a little more. All right, you might make a topic a little clearer or hear an example that really makes it stick for you. But the counter to this is there is a marginal cost. And this is obviously the bad stuff from doing a little more or less. And on the topic of this video, again, every second goes by, your benefit or marginal benefit is the extra knowledge. But the marginal cost, well, that's anything bad associated with it. Maybe you're getting a little tired, maybe a little hungry. Maybe you have something else you'd rather be doing, and you're missing out on all that stuff because you're dedicating your time to this, which, thank you, but again, there is a cost to this. So how do we use these? Well, effectively, there's three things we can be in a state of, okay? We can have marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, okay? So marginal benefit, marginal cost, I do a little bit more, and I'm getting lots of marginal benefit, but very little marginal cost. In this case, what this tells me to do is that I should do more of this thing. And the logic behind this is that there's still benefit to basically squeeze out, and I want to get as much benefit as I can. So I want to keep going until I'm getting the most out of things. Now, the next one is the opposite. Marginal benefit is less than marginal cost. And this tells us that the opposite has happened. We have surpassed this point, and we're now in this range here. This is not great, because it means every time I do this thing, I'm actually paying more than I'm benefiting. So ideally, we would do less of whatever we're doing, but sometimes that's not possible. So sometimes we immediately stop. Okay. There's certain things that once we do them, we can't really take them back per se. So for example, doing less of whatever you're doing, maybe I'm making products and I make 100 today, 100 tomorrow, 101. And then I realize, oh, that 101 is really not that great. I can pull back to 100 the next day. But let's say it's like eating, right? As I eat, there's a cost involved because I start to get full. I can't really like undo my eating. I guess you could throw up, but in general, once it's done, it's done. So the best action is just stop. And then finally, there is, what if they're equal? So we start here, benefits higher than cost. Over time, they start to close in on each other. And then all of a sudden, we hit this sweet spot. This is the optimal spot. This is the optimal amount. All right. This is kind of the sweet spot where we say, once I've hit here, I know I've done exactly enough. I've gotten everything I can out of this activity or action or whatever you want to talk about. I'm good. All right. So let's take an example in the real world so you can make this a little clearer. Right. I'm a big fan of the gym. I like going to the gym. I like lifting weights. That's like my real passion. So when I go to the gym, when I get there, my marginal benefit's super high. I'm excited to lift weights. It's going to feel great. Life's good. My marginal cost is quite low because, again, I guess I'm starting to burn energy, right? I'm using my time up, but I enjoy it. But even though I love the gym, over time, the benefit starts to come down. The marginal cost starts to creep up. And there's going to be a point right about here where I say, that's enough gym time. I've kind of gotten all I can out of this session. I should call it here. Now, I'm just as guilty as you. Sometimes I don't listen to the signal and I keep going and I keep going, I keep going. And this is when, I start to accumulate fatigue. This is where I start to risk injury. This is where I get injured. And I would have been smarter to stop earlier, right? It turns out we can use this marginal thinking in all aspects of life. I encourage you the next time you're in the process of something, every so often stop to think about what's the benefit of doing a little more and what's the cost of doing a little more. And then find out which of these three situations you're in and evaluate whether you should do more of that thing or stop. This is particularly useful when studying, right? The first hour of studying is probably great, but there's going to come a time where more studying is just not going to do it. You're just wasting your time, hurting your brain, all sorts of terrible things. It's a very powerful tool, and probably of the three, the most powerful. A really good way to remember this, and honestly, a life lesson for pretty much most of economics, is you can kind of equate this story to a classic, which is Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? This situation with marginal benefit up here, marginal cost down here, this is just not enough, too cold. Up here, where marginal cost is here, marginal benefit's here, it's too hot. And we're all trying to find that point that's just right. It turns out that basic premise of too much, too little, just right is going to carry us through a lot of economic analysis, especially at the introductory level. Most of the things we study are going to be, we're not doing enough or we're doing too much. How do we get back to that sweet spot? I hope this was very helpful, and I hope you learned a little bit today about how economists think. Well, folks, that wraps up another lesson for today. I hope it was helpful. If you found the video valuable, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about the content or requests for other topics or subjects you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment below. Until next time, keep learning and make it easy.